9.2, 45, 45, 90 triangles. So today is the first day that we're starting what we call special right triangles, or SRT triangles. So let's do a basic radical review. So remember, the square root of 2 times square root of 2. What we do is multiply that, and that gives us the square root of 4, which we know the square root of 4 is 2. But if you automatically know that you're multiplying two exact square roots together, so two square roots that have the exact same number inside, whatever that number is, it's just going to come out, and it's just going to give you 2. Okay. 2 square root of 2 over 6 square root of 2. Remember, radicals can cancel out just like anything else. If you have a number on top that's the exact same as on bottom, you can cancel them out. So that square root of 2 and that square root of 2 cancel. Because if you think about it, square root of 2 divided by square root of 2 is just 1. It's just going to go to 1. And then we're left with 2 over 6, which when we reduce that just gives us 1 over 3. Next one, square root of 2 over square root of 2. Remember, same thing. It divides to equal 1, or they cancel, and they just go to 1. And then this one. So 9 square root of 2 over 2 times the square root of 2. So if you want to, remember, you could put that over 1. And remember, we multiply fractions straight across the top and straight across the bottom. So those two square roots, square root of 2 times square root of 2, as we talked about, just become 2. So on top, what you have is you end up getting 9 times 2 divided by 2. Well, remember, we have a 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Those cancel out, and you're left with just 9. Or the other way you could have done it is 9 times 2 is 18 over 2, and it still just gives you 9. Okay? So either one of those ways would have worked. So getting into actual 45, 45, 90 triangles, the main formula, the formula we're going to use for that is leg times hypotenuse is equal to leg times square root of 2. Okay? So when you have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, what that means is I have a 90 degree, 45 degree, 45 degree. So I have literally a 45, 45, 90. Okay? Those three numbers are the three interior angles of a triangle. Okay? And so what that means is my legs, the two legs are the exact same length. Okay? So they're going to be the same. They're congruent with each other. If we wanted to put our congruent tick marks, this side and this side are congruent. And then, of course, across from the 90 is my hypotenuse. Okay? So these sides are legs, and then the hypotenuse. Two legs are congruent, and then you have your hypotenuse, which is your leg times square root of 2 is how we find the hypotenuse. All right, so on example 1, we need to find the x and the y. So let's label these. So across from the 90 is my hypotenuse. And then it's a 45 and a 90, so we know this other one's going to be 45 as well. So that's going to be a leg and a leg. Okay, so I'm missing both of my legs. So in order to find this, let's find, doesn't matter which one we find first, but let's find x. Okay. Now the formula we're going to use is the hypotenuse is equal to leg times the square root of 2. So we plug in everything we know. Our hypotenuse, we see here, is 4, so we're going to plug in that. And then our leg is equal to x. At least we're going to find x first, okay? So the hypotenuse is 4. And then the leg is x times square root of 2. So right here, all we did was plugged in. Okay. Next step is we need to solve for x. So basically, I need to get x by itself. So right now, it's x times the square root of 2. So I'm going to divide that square root of 2, do the opposite. So it's going to be 4 divided by the square root of 2. Okay, so that next step is we solve for x. And what we end up getting is 4 over square root of 2 equals x. Now I'm going to switch it around. X equals 4 over square root of 2. Okay. Now, the goal here now is we need to simplify. And when we have 4 over square root of 2, I cannot divide a 4 in a square root of 2. For, if we want to leave it in simplified radical form, we're not going to combine a whole number with a radical. But the radical rules state that I cannot leave a radical on the bottom. Okay? So, we cannot leave a radical on the bottom. So I got to get that square root 2 somehow off the bottom. And so what I do is I'm going to take our x equals 4 over square root 2. Anytime you have a radical that you need to get off the bottom, you multiply the whole thing times whatever that radical is on the bottom. So that radical on the bottom is square root 2, so I'm going to multiply it times square root 2. And then I'm going to multiply the top times the same. Okay? And why we do this, how we're able to do this, is because if you think about it, anytime you multiply something times 1, it doesn't change the value of it. And so whenever I multiply square root of 2 divided by square root of 2, we've already talked about that just divides out to equal 1. So I'm multiplying this times this over this, and it's, in essence, I'm multiplying this whole thing times 1, and it's not changing the value of it. Okay, that's how we're able to mathematically do this without changing the value. So let's multiply. And remember, when you multiply, you go straight across. Okay. So it's 4 times square root 2. Can't combine them, so we're just going to put them next to each other. Now, square root 2 times square root 2, we've already talked about, just gives us 2. So just so reminder, what you do here is multiply bottom radical to the top and bottom. Oops. All right, and I end up with x is equal to 4 square root 2 over 2. Okay, now the radical is not on the bottom anymore. Okay, but now we just got to, last thing we got to do is just reduce. So if you see, I have a whole number 4 and a whole number 2. So that's 4 divided by 2. Those can be combined and reduced. And 4 divided by 2 is simply 2. And then we still just have our square root of 2. So that's my answer for x. Okay. Now, the nice thing about 45, 45, 90 triangles is, as I mentioned on the last slide, is that the legs are exactly the same. Okay, the legs are congruent with each other. So if I have x and y are my two legs, once I find x, y is going to be the exact same thing. Okay, so your legs are the same on a 45, 45, 90 triangle. All right, and we found x and y there. So example 2. Okay, so right off the bat, I'm going to label it. This is my h, my hypotenuse, and these are my legs. Okay, so I have one, it's 45, I have a 90, so I know the other one's going to be 45 as well, because they have to add up to 180. And let's find x first. So we use our formula, and I'm going to shorten it to h, hypotenuse is equal to leg times square root 2. Okay, my let's plug it in. H is x. My leg, I want to use the leg that I know it. So I know this one shows me y, but this one is 3 square root 2. Remember, the legs are exact same, but use the one that we know the value for. So it's 3 square root 2 times the square root 2. And then I'm going to simplify this. So x is equal to 3. There's nothing to multiply that whole number 3 with. But these two, square root 2 times square root 2, just give me 2. So x is just equal to 6. A lot simpler than the first example. I did the harder one first to make the rest of them easier for you. And then we need to find y. Well, y is a leg, and we've already mentioned that the legs are congruent with each other. So if I know one leg, I know the other one. So one of the legs is 3 square root 2, so y is just going to be 3 square root 2. And there's my 2 answers for that one. All right. So example 3. Once again, label, across from the 90 is my hypotenuse, then I have my 2 legs. And we know my legs are congruent with each other. So right off the bat, I can answer that. Want to find y. Y is going to be the same as the other leg, so 3 square root 2 over 2. All right. Free answer. All right, I already got one of the 2 answers already. Next one, we want to find x. And we're going to use our formula. H is equal to L times square root 2. Plug in. My H is x. The L, the one we know, is 3 square root 2 over 2. And that's multiplied times the square root of 2. Okay. Now remember, if you want to put that over 1 so that it's easier to makes it a fraction times a fraction, you're more than welcome to. So when I multiply across the top, 3 has nothing to multiply with, so we bring our 3. Square root 2 times square root 2 just becomes times 2, because square root 2 times square root 2 gives me 2. And then across the bottom, you have 2 times 1, which is just 2. And when we do this, 3 times 2 is 6 on top, and then 6 divided by 2 is just 3. So x is equal to 3. And that's it.